Your toaster can start a fire while you're asleep. Federal records show major brands linked to overheating, electric shock, and spontaneous ignition. Some of those models were recalled and never removed from homes. For families, seniors, and children, this is a real burn and house fire risk. I'm exposing 8 brands to avoid and 2 safer picks at the end. Stay until the last one, because it explains why dangerous toasters never disappear. 8. Toastmaster sells itself on familiarity and has long been marketed as classic American kitchen equipment with simple controls, no screens, and no learning curve, creating the impression of safety through age and consistency. That psychology works because consumers assume a long-running brand must have solved its safety problems and equate time with reliability and trust. Toastmaster proves the opposite. On June 24, 1991, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission issued Release Number 91-087, Low Return Rate Prompts Second Notice, warning that Model D 126T posed potential fire, burn, and shock hazards. This was not routine. It was a second national alert because the first recall failed and too few consumers returned defective units, leaving dangerous toasters plugged in and used daily, forcing regulators to warn the public again. A second notice is a major red flag, showing the original intervention did not remove the hazard. The risks were electrical and thermal, fire, burn, and shock, with compromised insulation or grounding allowing current to reach surfaces, uncontrolled temperatures causing burns, and heat buildup or arcing leading to internal ignition. All 3 applied to this model. Toastmaster acknowledged the defect, yet thousands of units were never recovered, meaning the failure was not only producing a dangerous toaster, but allowing it to circulate for decades. Because this occurred in 1991 before digital alerts and easy registration, many units were never tracked and were handed down, resold, or left in rental homes with no warning attached. This is how zombie appliances are created, products that failed federal safety standards but continue operating long after regulators tried to remove them. Seniors are the most exposed, since older households keep appliances longer and trust familiar brands, allowing a 1991 hazard to remain active in 2026. Still plugged in, still heating, still capable of shocking, burning, or igniting. Toastmaster did not fail once. It left behind a risk that never fully disappeared. 7. Proctor Silex. Proctor Silex sells affordability above all else, and its toasters are built to look harmless. Lightweight plastic, simple levers, no stainless steel, no premium finishes. Disposable appliances consumers expect to replace quickly. When a toaster costs under $20, buyers assume the worst outcome is inconvenience, like uneven browning or early failure. They do not expect a fire source, but Proctor Silex produced a toaster that refused to shut down. On April 12, 2000, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled approximately 95,000 Proctor Silex toasters with a blunt warning. Heating elements can remain on after toast pops up. In a proper design, the pop-up is the final safety gate. Bread rises, power stops, heat ends, the circuit disengages. In these units, toast rose, but the coils stayed energized, creating thermal runaway. Current kept flowing, temperatures climbed, components degraded, and crumbs dried, carbonized, and moved toward ignition. This is why the recall mattered, and why timing mattered too. Tens of thousands were already in homes before intervention. Place that failure beside national fire data, the Electrical Safety Foundation. International estimates electrical malfunctions cause about 51,000 U.S. home fires each year, many starting with small countertop appliances left unattended. Proctor Silex created exactly the conditions ESFI warns about: hidden heat, delayed ignition, and false completion signals. Engineering-wise, the pattern fits defective switching, relay contacts welding shut, or mechanical cutoffs failing under load, so lever position and timers no longer stop power. For seniors, the risk multiplies with slower reaction times, reduced heat sensitivity, and medication-related drowsiness. This was not a cheap inconvenience. It was an uncontrolled heating system on the counter. 6. Farberware presents itself as dependable and is closely associated with cookware, coffee makers, and countertop appliances sold nationwide, with packaging and advertising that emphasize durability and reliability and suggest long-term household use. That image creates trust, leading consumers to assume that a company known for pots and pans understands heat control and that decades of experience equal temperature discipline. Farberware violated that assumption. On March 19, 2008, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, in cooperation with Sultan Incorporated, recalled models FCT 200 and FCT 100 after warning that the toaster can turn on without bread and ignite items placed on top. This was not a minor defect, but an autonomous ignition system. In properly engineered toasters, power flows only when the lever is engaged, the circuit is closed, and the timer is active, all designed to fail safely. But in these units, that logic collapsed and electrical current reached heating elements without user input, producing heat with no lever, no bread, and no active cycle. Unsupervised heat is the definition of fire risk, and regulators confirmed that activation and ignition had already occurred. Common materials such as paper towels, plastic covers, bread bags, and kitchen cloths, often placed near appliances, ignited easily under uncontrolled radiant heat. From an engineering perspective, the failure points to breakdowns in switching and power isolation, including welded relay contacts, failed control boards, or wiring that bypassed safety interlocks. Once that happens, the toaster becomes permanently armed, no longer waiting for the user, but for fuel, which American kitchens readily provide. Unlike Proctor Silex models that overheated after use, Farberware units could activate without any cycle at all, silently igniting while homeowners slept, kitchens stood empty, or flammable materials sat inches away, turning a countertop appliance into a passive ignition source. For older adults, the danger multiplies since many seniors cover appliances, keep cloth or paper nearby, and often live alone, meaning self-activation removes the final layer of human supervision. By the time regulators intervened, thousands of units had already entered private homes. Some returned, but many not, leaving unrecovered toasters as ongoing fire starters. Farberware did not merely sell defective products. It placed autonomous ignition devices into American kitchens. 5. Hamilton Beach. Hamilton Beach trades on familiarity, with its logo appearing in nearly every American department store on shelves filled with small appliances such as toasters, coffee makers, and microwaves, all marketed as dependable, affordable, and safe. The strategy is simple: look harmless, feel familiar, and stay priced low enough to avoid scrutiny, leading consumers to assume that a company this large must have strong engineering controls and that serious defects are caught before products reach homes. That assumption was wrong. On June 30th, 2011, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled approximately 300,000 Hamilton Beach toasters after warning that the heating element can remain energized indefinitely and may ignite contents. Indefinitely means no reliable shutdown, no guaranteed cutoff, and no dependable safety boundary. In properly designed toasters, heat is controlled by timed circuits and thermal cutoffs so that power stops when cycles end or temperatures rise too high. But in these units, those systems failed and electricity continued flowing through resistance wire long after users believed the cycle had ended, allowing thermal energy to accumulate without limit. As metal heated, insulation degraded, plastic softened, and crumbs carbonized, ignition became inevitable. Regulators documented this as a verified failure mode, since internal contents such as bread residue, paper crumbs, and food particles are dry, flammable, and positioned directly beside heating elements. This is why the National Fire Protection Association identifies small kitchen appliances as major contributors to residential fires, because confined plastic housings combined with uncontrolled heat form efficient ignition systems, and Hamilton Beach placed that mechanism on countertops nationwide. From an engineering perspective, energized indefinitely indicates defective relays, welded contacts, or failed thermal sensors that prevent circuits from disengaging, making lever position timers and user input irrelevant once degradation begins. For older adults, the danger intensifies since many prepare breakfast while groggy from medication, move slowly through routines, and live alone. Meaning a toaster that never shuts off removes the final margin of safety and leaves no second chance. By the time regulators intervened in 2011, hundreds of thousands of defective units were already in homes. Some returned, but many not, leaving unrecovered devices as ongoing ignition sources. Hamilton Beach did not merely sell faulty toasters. It sold devices regulators confirmed could heat without limit. And when heat has no limit, fires are not accidents. They are outcomes. 4. Black & Decker. Black & Decker is one of the most recognizable appliance and tool manufacturers in the United States, present in garages, kitchens, and hardware stores nationwide, and long associated with durability and engineering credibility. That reputation is the trap. Because consumers assume a company this large cannot afford unsafe products and believe multiple layers of testing prevent serious defects. Black & Decker's recall history proves the opposite. Scale does not prevent failure, it amplifies it. In 2002, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled approximately 2.1 million Versatoast toasters, a number that reflects not a small defective batch, but a systemic engineering collapse. 5 years later, in December 2007, regulators issued another recall warning that an electrical component can overheat and ignite the circuit board, meaning internal combustion of the control system itself. Modern toasters rely on printed circuit boards to regulate timing, current flow, and shutdown. And when these boards overheat, insulation burns away, copper traces degrade, and electrical arcing begins, inevitably leading to ignition. Reuters reported on both recalls, confirming that the defects were serious enough to require national intervention and were documented and publicly verified. From an engineering standpoint, circuit board ignition reflects failures in thermal management and power regulation, with components exceeding temperature limits, protective cutoffs failing, and heat dissipation proving inadequate. In effect, these toasters were designed to tolerate conditions they could not survive, yet millions were sold anyway. This is the danger of industrial scale. When small companies fail, hundreds are affected, but when Black & Decker fails, millions are, turning each defective unit into a distributed ignition source because these products were marketed as reliable staples. Many remained in use long after recalls, unregistered, unreturned, and still plugged in. For seniors, the risk is greater, since older consumers trust familiar logos and keep appliances for decades, even though recall systems rely on voluntary compliance and millions of units never came back. Black & Decker repeated the failure in 2002 and 2007 at national scale, proving that brand size does not guarantee safety, and that when safety collapses, it collapses everywhere. 3. Oster/Sunbeam. Oster and Sunbeam present themselves as practical middle-market brands marketed as solid and dependable for everyday families, creating trust that consumers interpret as balanced price, quality, and safety. In 2025, that trust collapsed. On September 25, 2025, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled more than 1 million Oster French door countertop ovens manufactured by Sunbeam Products Inc., warning that the doors can close unexpectedly, posing a burn hazard. This reflected mechanical failure combined with extreme thermal exposure, since these ovens reach temperatures capable of causing second-degree burns within seconds, and internal metal surfaces often exceed safe contact limits. In properly engineered units, door mechanisms remain stable under heat expansion, vibration, and repeated use. But in these models that engineering failed, hinges and retention systems lost resistance, materials expanded beyond tolerance, structural stiffness degraded, and gravity and thermal distortion took over, causing doors to slam shut. When that happens, hands and forearms are positioned directly in front of exposed heating elements and hot metal surfaces, with no warning, delay, or protective barrier, making burns immediate. The recall followed injury reports and hazard assessments confirming unacceptable risk, but by then over 1 million units had already been distributed, showing this was not a rare malfunction but a structural design flaw. From an engineering standpoint, the failure indicates inadequate material selection and tolerance planning, weakened retention forces, and insufficient safety margins, meaning the door was never truly secure and only appeared stable under ideal conditions. Real kitchens involve steam, grease, repeated heating cycles, and aging materials, all of which steadily degraded the mechanism until it collapsed. For older adults, the consequences are severe, since sudden door closure can trigger loss of balance, dropped hot trays, and secondary injuries, while aging skin heals slowly, and infection and hospitalization risks are higher. Although some units were repaired, many were not, leaving unrepaired appliances as mechanical injury devices on countertops. Oster and Sunbeam did not fail electrically but structurally, failing to protect users from the heat they created, turning a design flaw into a lasting injury risk. 2. Bodum markets itself as refined, with minimalist design, European branding, and stylish colors that position its products as thoughtful upgrades rather than disposable appliances, leading consumers to believe they are paying for stronger engineering discipline, better insulation, and higher safety standards. That image is the trap. In 2019, that belief collapsed. On July 17, 2019, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled Bodum Bistro toasters after warning that the toasters can leak electric current when operating at maximum normal temperature, while Health Canada issued a matching recall confirming the same defect. This was not cosmetic, but an electrical containment failure. In properly designed appliances, live current is isolated behind layers of insulation and grounding, and even at peak temperature, electricity should never reach external surfaces. Yet in these units, insulation degraded, sealed pathways became conductive, protective barriers failed, and current escaped. Users could receive electrical shocks during ordinary use, not misuse or modification. From an engineering standpoint, this reflected insulation breakdown under thermal stress, materials unable to maintain dielectric strength, and grounding systems that failed to compensate, allowing electricity to follow the path of least resistance, which can be the human body. The Consumer Product Safety Commission does not issue shock hazard recalls lightly because electrical leakage creates direct injury risks, including muscle spasms, falls, cardiac interference, and secondary trauma. For older adults, the danger is greater since reduced balance, slower reflexes, and higher rates of heart disease increase the likelihood of serious injury, and a sudden shock near a countertop can lead to fractures or cardiac complications. Health Canada's involvement confirmed the defect was not isolated, as independent regulators in 2 countries reached the same conclusion. The product was unsafe. Bodum participated in the recall, but only after defective units had entered kitchens across North America, making the failure more severe. The company was not selling budget appliances, but a promise of premium quality, and behind that promise were compromised insulation, grounding, and user protection. They charged more and delivered less safety, turning a premium image into systemic failure. 1. Cuisinart represents the highest level of trust in this market, linked to culinary schools, professional kitchens, and premium cookware, with a logo that signals expertise and control of heat. Consumers buy Cuisinart because they believe it is safer, that engineers paid more attention, and that shortcuts were not taken. That belief makes this case the most serious because with Cuisinart, danger is hidden behind reputation rather than low prices. In recent years, ClassAction.org began collecting consumer reports concerning toaster oven model TOB40 and opened an ongoing legal intake investigation focused on allegations of auto-activation and failure to shut off, creating fire risk. This is not a rumor form, but a centralized intake system that screens repeated complaints for litigation, and that process is active for TOB40. Unlike government recalls, this stage represents unresolved danger with no mandatory fix, enforced repair, or required removal, only accumulating evidence. Users reported continued heating after cycles ended, spontaneous activation, and internal overheating severe enough to discolor housings and produce burning odors, triggering formal intake. From an engineering standpoint, this indicates failure in control logic and power isolation. Since modern toaster ovens rely on electronic boards, sensors, timers, and relays to regulate current, when auto-activation occurs, system integrity collapses as control boards misfire, relays stick, or firmware malfunctions. And when shutoff fails, thermal escalation begins with heating elements remaining energized, temperatures rising, plastic softening, insulation degrading, and ignition becoming possible. What separates Cuisinart from other brands is expectation. When budget brands fail, consumers anticipate problems, but when Cuisinart fails, users are blindsided, trust the cycle, and leave the room, removing supervision. For older adults, the danger increases because premium appliances are kept longer and repaired instead of replaced, allowing defects that never reach recall status to remain active for years. The absence of a finalized lawsuit does not mean safety. It means complaints are unresolved, regulators have not intervened, and defective units remain plugged in. Cuisinart has not been convicted, but is being investigated to identify patterns of failure and risk. Every other brand on this list was forced to act, but Cuisinart has not yet, making it the most dangerous, because unresolved defects are the ones that keep burning, and allowing that uncertainty to persist is the ultimate betrayal. Safe pick 1. Breville does not sell fear, it sells verification. In an industry filled with vague claims like premium and engineered for life, the brand anchors its products to independent certification on BestBuy.com specification pages. Breville models consistently list UL listed, which is not marketing but a legal statement confirming evaluation by Underwriters Laboratories, one of the most respected safety testing organizations in the United States. UL does not review advertisements. It disassembles hardware and examines wiring insulation, grounding systems, thermal cutoffs, circuit boards, and enclosure materials while running extended heat tests, simulating fault conditions, and analyzing failure modes. Only after passing these evaluations does a product earn the UL mark, and every defective brand on this list failed at one of those stages, from welded relays to collapsed insulation and misfiring controls. Breville's UL listing shows its designs met standards for electrical containment, fire resistance, and overheating prevention at the time of testing. This is not a guarantee of perfection, but proof of process, meaning safety mechanisms were evaluated before consumers ever used the appliance. Best Buy's public documentation allows buyers to verify certification independently without relying on packaging slogans. For older adults, this verification is critical since UL testing covers shock prevention, surface temperature limits, and grounding integrity, addressing the same hazards responsible for past recalls. Certified products also require disciplined design, including standardized components, rated insulation, and compliant circuit layouts, making shortcuts expensive and compliance cheaper in the long run. Breville invests in certification because recalls, lawsuits, and reputation damage cost far more, and that choice appears in federal safety records with no major U.S. fire recalls, no systemic shock investigations, and no unresolved mass complaints. Safety is not luck. It is certification. Safe Pick 2. KitchenAid. KitchenAid does not compete on shortcuts. It competes on longevity. For generations, the brand built its reputation on durable stand mixers, heavy-use dishwashers, and long-lasting countertop appliances, and that philosophy extends to its toasters. On Brand Smart USA listings and the official KitchenAid website, toaster models consistently display UL listed, which is not a slogan but regulatory compliance verified by Underwriters Laboratories after independent testing of electrical safety, fire resistance, grounding, and thermal controls. UL testing targets the same failure modes that damaged other brands: uncontrolled heating, insulation breakdown, relay malfunction, circuit board ignition, and electrical leakage. And KitchenAid's certified models passed those assessments. This does not mean they never wear out. It means they were engineered to tolerate wear through components rated for extended thermal cycling, insulation that maintains dielectric strength after repeated heating, and structures that resist warping under sustained temperatures. Those requirements cost money, and KitchenAid pays them because its business model depends on decades of use, not rapid replacement. For older adults, reliable appliances reduce shopping frequency, limit exposure to defective new models, and stabilize the kitchen environment. KitchenAid also provides transparent manuals, service support, and warranty systems, which are part of safety because they prevent misuse, prolonged operation of damaged devices, and silent degradation. Every unsafe brand on this list lacked at least one layer: certification, transparency, or durability planning, while KitchenAid built all three, choosing regulatory scrutiny and verification over vague promises and rapid turnover. That is what real reliability looks like. So here's the bottom line. Safe appliances are built through testing, certification, and accountability. Dangerous ones are built through shortcuts, weak oversight, and profit pressure. Now, do me a favor. Look at the toaster on your counter right now. Is it on the recall list, or is it backed by real certification? Drop the brand name in the comments. Let's help each other avoid silent fire risks. If you refuse to gamble with overheating coils and leaking current, hit like and subscribe. We investigate what corporations hide behind glossy packaging. Stay alert, stay protected, and I'll see you in the next case.